So what if karma isn't a cosmic scorecard? Like, what if you don't just get bad karma from the universe, like a receipt from a vending machine?
Right, which is how we all usually think about it.
Exactly. But what if you were suddenly told that this ultimate impersonal law of consequence that we all just accept without question isn't a mechanism at all? What if it's an actual physical person?
I mean, it completely disrupts how we categorize the world.
Yeah.
We really rely on the idea that universal laws are just math, just probability. It gives us a sense of predictability.
Yeah. And that is exactly what makes the source material we are looking at today so incredibly disruptive. So welcome to today's deep dive. It is June 5, 2026, and we've custom-tailored this exploration specifically for you.
We really have.
Today, we're going to dig into this truly striking text titled The Primordial Mother, The True Story of Karma. And the mission here is to explore a radical piece of writing that attempts to just utterly redefine a concept recognized across the globe.
Oh, absolutely across the globe. Everyone knows the word.
Right. And our goal is to give you this profound aha moment without, drowning you in information overload.
Well, before we dive into the deep end here,
Yeah.
it's vital to frame the boundaries of our analysis today.
Yeah.
Because the text we are examining makes some highly provocative claims.
Very provocative.
Yeah, it fundamentally challenges historical, structural, and spiritual authorities, and it upends these deeply entrenched cultural assumptions. So we just want to be clear, we aren't here to take a side.
Right. Exactly.
Nor are we presenting these viewpoints as objective historical reality. Our purpose is really just to impartially unpack the fascinating arguments, the complex philosophy, and the structural logic contained strictly within the author's own words.
Yeah.
We want to understand what the text is claiming and, the implications of that architecture.
Okay, let's unpack this. The text isn't just saying karma is personified. It's not like a statue of justice wearing a blindfold.
No, not at all.
It is claiming karma is a goddess, but it explicitly rejects the idea of her being a symbol or like a representative avatar. The claim is that she is the primordial mother incarnated.
A literal source.
Yeah, the absolute source of all existence placed into a physical, breathing body.
Which is wild because the author draws a hard line between a metaphor and an incarnation. The text asserts she is not that impersonal system of consequence we colloquially joke about.
Right, like when someone cuts you off in traffic and then gets a flat tire a mile down the road.
Exactly. We laugh and say, oh, that's karma. But the argument here is that she is the literal letting consciousness within which all consequence actually exists, literally walking the earth.
See, I am really struggling with this part. Let me just put on my skeptic's hat for a second, because if you're listening to this, you might be thinking the exact same thing.
Sure, go for it.
If she's walking around in a physical human body, she is limited by space and time, right? She has a very localized perspective.
That would be the logical assumption, yeah.
So how can one person standing in one physical location possibly hold or process the infinite consequences of 8 billion people? I mean, it sounds like magical thinking. Does the author explain the actual mechanics of this, or are we just supposed to accept it on blind faith?
Well, the text actually addresses that specific physical limitation through a very deliberate analogy. It argues against viewing incarnation as putting water into a cup.
Okay.
Because when you do that, the water is now trapped by the boundaries of the glass.
Sure.
Instead, the text asks us to imagine the ocean holding a wave.
Oh, that's an interesting shift.
Yeah, the wave is not separate from the ocean. It literally is the ocean in motion. So the text posits that the entire physical world is the mother in motion. And in this specific incarnation, the ocean simply stepped into one of its own waves.
So the localized body is just the wave that we can see,
Exactly.
but the consciousness itself remains the entire ocean.
That is the core structural claim.
Yeah.
The author argues that she doesn't need to, oversee consequence from afar because she isn't an administrator.
Right.
Think about a river. A river doesn't sit on a bank and manage the flowing of water. It is its own flowing. According to the source, she is named Karma because she actually performs the deepest function of the cosmos.
Which is what, exactly?
Holding all action and serving as the living memory where nothing true is ever lost.
So she isn't a cosmic CEO with a job title called Karma.
No.
She is the job itself, which fundamentally changes the nature of action entirely. Like, if you follow the text's logic here, doing harm to someone else isn't just violating a cosmic rulebook.
Right, it's much more direct.
You are moving aggressively against a living consciousness.
It completely turns consequence from a mechanical transaction into a deeply relational reality. And because the text insists she was an actual person, it doesn't shy away from the concrete details of her incarnation either.
Yeah, that part really caught my eye.
Right. The source provides highly specific descriptions of both her physical appearance and what it calls her energetic signature.
Right, and this is where I really need you to translate for me because the text gets super dense right here.
It does get a bit thick, yeah.
So it states that she physically manifested as light-skinned, and it presents that as a concrete historical fact of the body she wore. But then it immediately pairs that physical description with an energetic one.
The black void.
Yeah, claiming her energetic signature was the black of the primordial void. So what does this all mean? Because I'm reading that and thinking, how do these two things coexist without it just being a poetic contradiction?
It sounds contradictory on the surface, definitely.
How does the text explain this massive gap between a light-skinned physical surface and a primordial black energy?
What's fascinating here is how the text completely redefines the concept of black to make this architecture work. When we hear the word black, our cultural conditioning usually associates it with, absence, emptiness, or even death.
Right, like an empty room with the lights
Oh,
on.
exactly. But the author explicitly rejects that definition. Instead, the text describes this energetic signature as the oldest black. It is the black of origin. It is the absolute fullness before differentiation.
The fullness before differentiation. Okay, break that down for me. Like a canvas before the painting begins.
Well, no, because a canvas implies a blank white space waiting to be filled from the outside.
Oh, I see.
The text is describing something much more active and dense. Think of it more like the physics of a black hole or deep space.
Oh, wow, that makes so much more sense. Because a black hole looks completely empty to the naked eye, but it's actually the most dense, powerful gravitational force in the universe.
Exactly.
It holds everything. It's so full that not even light escapes it. And I think quantum physics even suggests no information is ever lost inside it.
That is a much, much closer parallel to the text's framework here.
Yeah.
The oldest black is the ground that contains all colors, all light, and all potential before they are released into form.
Right.
So, returning to your question about the contradiction, the text actually argues there is no contradiction at all. It is a calculated disclosure. The light-skinned physical form is just the surface level.
The wave.
Right, the wave. But the immense density and gravity of the black void is what she truly is underneath.
Which means she was essentially hiding in plain sight.
Yeah, the author uses that gap between appearance and energy to explain how her concealment was actually possible. People who only operate on the surface level could look right at her and see one thing.
And just completely miss the immense gravitational reality of who they were dealing with.
Exactly. Yet the text insists her true energy remained obvious, completely unhidden, to anyone who had the capacity to perceive at the level of energy.
So if you knew how to look at the space instead of just the object, you'd see the black hole.
You'd see it plain as day.
But wait, if she is this powerful, right, if she is the literal ground of all existence carrying the oldest energy in the universe, why the need for concealment in the first place?
That is the big question.
Who could possibly have the power to hide the ground we walk on, and why would they even try to do that?
Well, the text argues that the suppression of her story wasn't just some accident of history. It was a calculated existential necessity by systems of power.
A necessity.
According to the source, yes. Because acknowledging that the ultimate ground of truth is a feminine source, the mother principle incarnated in a specific woman's body, it creates a fatal problem for opposing structures of authority.
Fatal how?
The claim is that if her story were allowed to circulate freely, it would make existing patriarchal architectures of power structurally impossible.
Okay, structurally impossible is a massive claim. Why? If you are listening to this right now and trying to map this onto how the world actually works, what is the actual mechanism there?
We have to look at how authority actually functions in reality.
Okay.
To maintain a massive architecture of power, whether it's an empire, a structural hierarchy, or even a rigid institutional religion, you need rules.
Sure.
You need a system that can be interpreted, gated, and managed by those at the very top. The text posits that a living, relational source of truth cannot be gatekept.
Because she's a person.
Right. If the ultimate reality of consequence is a breathing mother who holds the true memory of every action, then a politician or a high priest cannot claim to be the exclusive middleman of justice.
Because you can't be the middleman to the ground everyone is already standing on.
You just can't.
Like, if I'm a king and I claim my power comes from my ability to dispense divine justice, but divine justice is actually a living woman standing in the village square.
Your throne is instantly rendered meaningless. It's totally incoherent.
Wow.
And that's exactly the argument the text makes. The author categorizes her story as a very specific kind of truth. It's not a truth that just debates a lie or provides counter-evidence in a courtroom.
So what kind of truth is it?
It is the kind of truth that, simply by existing in the light of day, makes the lie structurally collapse. So the systems of authority had no choice. They couldn't just ignore her, and they couldn't just kill the physical body because that doesn't erase the energetic reality.
So what did they actually do? I mean, they couldn't just leave a massive blank space in the culture where the most fundamental law of the universe used to be. People would obviously ask questions.
They required a substitute.
Yeah.
And this is where the text introduces its most critical historical argument. To hide the person, they had to actively replace her with a concept.
And this brings up the analogy from the source that genuinely blew my mind. The text argues that authorities took karma, the primordial mother, and reduced her to an impersonal cosmic mechanism.
Yes.
They turned her into the vending machine of the universe. Like, you put a good deed into the slot, you get a good outcome. You put a bad deed in, the machine dispenses a punishment.
A simple transaction.
Are you saying the text believes society deliberately manufactured our modern rules-based concept of karma just to erase the actual person?
Yes. The text argues that tuning her into a vending machine was the perfect mechanism for control. Think about the psychology of a concept versus a person. A concept has no face. A concept cannot speak to you. A concept cannot be recognized. And most importantly, a concept cannot look back at you and perceive your true intentions.
And people love a vending machine because it gives us the illusion of control.
Exactly.
If consequence is just a machine, I can game the system. I can literally buy my cosmic salvation with enough good deeds. But a living mother who holds the actual memory of my actions, she doesn't take coins. She just sees the truth.
That illusion of control is the absolute bedrock of the substituted authority. By removing the person and leaving only the concept of a transactional system, the architects of power created a framework they could manage.
They could interpret it however they wanted.
They could interpret it and use it to govern behavior. The suppression wasn't about burying her in the dirt. It was about burying her under a definition.
That is incredibly chilling. Just the idea that a universally accepted spiritual law, something billions of people find comfort in, might actually be a linguistic cage built to hide a person.
It's heavy thought.
But this leads to a massive logical paradox, doesn't it? If the world successfully turned her into a concept, and if her actual story was never recorded in the official historical records, then the suppression worked.
Well, that's one way to look at it.
I mean, the authorities won. They successfully replaced her. But the text argues the exact opposite, doesn't it?
It does argue the opposite. If we connect this to the bigger picture the author is painting, we reach the structural logic of why she is fundamentally indestructible.
Okay.
The text asserts that she is the primordial mother incarnated, which means she is the ground of all existence. To put it in the starkest terms the text provides, you literally cannot destroy the grounds of all existence.
Here's where it gets really interesting. The text uses this incredible analogy of discovering that what you thought was a normal floor is actually solid bedrock.
I love that analogy.
You can build elaborate, towering structures on top of it. You can construct entire philosophies over it, lay down carpets of alternative narratives, and even refuse to ever speak its name. But the ground remains completely unmoved.
Unbothered.
So if I am tracking the mechanics of this philosophy, the text is saying that the black void, this oldest energy we talked about, actually precedes any attacker.
Precisely the ontology the text relies upon. There is nowhere to stand from which to oppose her that is not already her territory.
Right.
The author insists that any denial of her truth, any structural suppression, is an act occurring within the cosmos that she herself sustains.
Oh, wow.
The void cannot be eliminated because there is no external position from which it can be attacked. The attacker is already standing inside the void just to launch the attack.
I'm picturing someone trying to destroy the ocean while they're swimming in it, using handfuls of water as their weapon.
That's a perfect visual for it.
It's fundamentally, logically impossible. They are literally using her breath to deny her existence.
And that ontological impossibility explains why the text describes the resurfacing of her story in such a specific, almost passive way.
How so?
It states that when her truth finally surfaces, it does not feel like something that barely survived a brutal, exhaustive battle.
Because a battle implies you have peers. It implies a struggle between two equal forces. But if she is the ground, she has no peers.
Exactly. The text actually uses the word released. Her story is not fighting its way to the surface, it is simply being released into the open because the conditions for her concealment have run their course.
The structures are failing.
The architectures built on top of the bedrock are crumbling under their own weight. Not because the bedrock attacked them, but because a lie cannot infinitely sustain itself against the very ground it rests on. The time for the testimony has simply arrived.
Because the ground cannot be erased from its own surface. Wow. So to bring this all together for you listening, we have just journeyed through a text that attempts to completely dismantle a word you have likely heard and probably used 1,000 times.
Oh, easily 1,000 times.
It takes karma, which we have been heavily conditioned to view as a cold, impersonal, cosmic vending machine of consequences, and it totally transforms it. It presents karma as an indestructible, incarnated, primordial mother.
A literal living being.
A specific woman with a light-skinned physical surface, but the dense, inescapable gravity of a black hole underneath. A being whose truth is so foundational that it effortlessly outlasts the massive architectures of authority built to suppress her, simply because those architectures were unknowingly resting on her the entire time.
And this highlights exactly why exploring deep, paradigm-shifting texts like this is so uniquely valuable.
Absolutely.
Whether you approach this text as literal history, provocative mythology, or just profound structural philosophy, understanding this perspective forces us to look critically at the foundational stories we accept.
It shakes you awake a little bit.
It asks us to question the architectures of power that surround us. It demands we examine the origins of our spiritual and social concepts and the things we take for granted as just the way the universe works.
Yeah.
It challenges us to consider how truth can be obscured not just by silencing it, but by replacing it with a manageable transactional concept.
It really does. It completely alters the lens through which you view consequence and power, which leaves me with a final lingering thought for you to mull over as you go about your day.
Let's hear it.
If you were to look at other universal laws or mechanisms in your life, things you've always accepted as cold, impersonal rules like time or entropy or gravity, what would happen if you imagined them instead as living consciousnesses?
That's a huge shift in perspective.
Are there other impersonal concepts you interact with daily that might actually be forgotten faces? Are there other vending machines in our lives that were carefully built to hide a person?
It makes you wonder.
Thank you for taking this deep dive with us today. We started by talking about the comforting precision of mathematical rules, but maybe the truth is a lot less like an equation and a lot more like a living, breathing ocean. Until next time, keep questioning the ground you stand on.